Let me know if it's on. Okay. Okay, can you guys hear us?
I hear you fine.
Okay. Chief Hofstein, can you hear us?
Yes, if you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Okay. I think we have everybody here. We had a little bit of technical difficulties here, but we are back. We'd like to welcome everybody to the Adams Brothers podcast. And we are here this evening with our current chief of police here in Deerfield Beach, BSO District 10 Chief Adam Hofstein. Welcome to the show, Adam. And then we have former chief and now retired Mr. Rodney Brimlow.
And current public safety director.
And the current public safety director, Mr. Rodney Brimlow. And we have a new face here. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. I don't want to mess your last name up, but go ahead. I believe you are the executive officer here in BSO District 10. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. I'm Lieutenant Chauncey Cade, the new XO here in Deerfield Beach.
Lieutenant Chauncey Cade. Can you spell that for me, please?
Chauncey. And then last name Cade.
Chauncey Cade. Okay.
Is your assistant chief for the city of Deerfield.
And he's the assistant chief here in District 10, Deerfield Beach. So we'd like to welcome you all to the Adams Brothers podcast. We've been trying to get you all on here for a little minute, and now we have you all here. And we're going to just be asking you all some questions here. And if you want to add in any questions or any comments or anything, you by all means, please jump in. So let's start.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Everyone introduce themselves and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Let's start. Please. Let's start with the current chief, Adam Hofstein. Go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Good evening. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for having us, gentlemen. I know we've been trying to get this together, and thank you for the honor of having me up first. My name is Adam Hofstein. I am the current Broward County Sheriff's Office District Chief here for the city of Deerfield Beach. And it is my pleasure to be here with Director Brimlow, who was both my predecessor and a very good friend, and also my very valued assistant chief, Chauncey Cade. So thank you for having us again. And a little background on myself. I've been with the Broward Sheriff's Office going on 32 years now. And throughout my career, I've worked a number of different assignments, and I've been fortunate to have spent at least a total of going on nearly 8 years here in the city of Deerfield Beach, not contiguously. I served previously as a patrol sergeant here for some years, and then I departed as my career kind of tailwinds, take you elsewhere. But I was very fortunate to be able to come back. And I served as the assistant chief and executive officer to Chief Brimlow. And I've been going on here now just about 4 years with both the assistant chief and now the chief going on 2 years.
Okay. And let's go to our former chief
and public safety director.
And public safety director right here in District 10, Deerfield Beach. Rodney Brimlow, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. I did retire, as you mentioned, from the Broward Sheriff's Office. I was there for 27 years. My last assignment was being the chief here in Deerfield. Prior to that, I was the assistant chief here, the executive officer. And prior to that, I was the assistant in Weston. A lot of other assignments at the Broward Sheriff's Office. But after I retired, the city was looking to do a department or an office of public safety. And when that job posted, that looked interesting to me because I absolutely love the city. I enjoyed my time in the city. I think Deerfield Beach is a phenomenal city. So I applied for that job when it came available, and I was blessed and fortunate to get it. and am absolutely happy. Now I'm coming up to almost 2 years as a civilian city employee for the city of Deerfield Beach. So been getting myself acclimated a lot to the city and some other aspects of it from the municipal side. For the Office of Public Safety, basically this department oversees fire, police, ocean rescue, park rangers, code compliance, parking enforcement, and emergency management for the city. So a lot of different departments that fall under it, but it's all directed toward public safety as its bottom line. I'm a native Floridian. Been down in South Florida since around 95. No, before that, 93. And love South Florida. Family down here. I got 3 kids, a wife, 3 kids at home, 1 kid up in Georgia now. So that's been the whole thing. I mean, it's just I'm glad to be here. I'm glad that you guys are including us in your podcast as well.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you very much. And lastly, Lieutenant Chauncey Cade, the executive officer here in District 10 BSO. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, how you guys doing? I've been with BSO for 12 years now. Worked in a couple different units before coming to Deerfield. I actually got promoted to sergeant in 2018, and Deerfield was my first assignment. So I stayed here for a little bit, then I ended up leaving to go to another district. And then I've been fortunate enough to, I was fortunate enough to come back in 2020 as your CST sergeant. So I've been here for 3 years now as the CST sergeant. I recently got promoted in April to be the XO of Deerfield Beach. Like Rodney said, it's a beautiful city. I love the city. I love the people here. And I got a great chief. And before him, I had another great chief. So I've been fortunate. So I have it good.
Well, we're happy to have you all here in Deerfield Beach, and I add, you all are doing an outstanding job. I talked to you all. This is my first time meeting you, Lieutenant Cade. I'm sure I'll see you out in public somewhere here along the line, but I'm always running into Chief Brimlow and Chief Hofstein, and we have a good rapport, and we want to work with you all as closely as we can to help you any way we can here to bridge that gap between BSO and the community. So
Yes.
welcome. So, okay, we sent you all some questions, and we want to start with the first question. And my first question is basically about community policing. And I'm going to ask that we start off with Chief Hofstein about community policing. And we think that community policing is very, very, very important for you to develop a rapport with the community. If you develop that rapport with the community, and if a murder happens, God forbid that happens, or if you're trying to solve a violent crime or something of that nature, and if you have that rapport with the community, they'll be more inclined to, to come and speak out, whether it's, anonymously or whatever. But we think community policing is very important. Do you think, Chief Hofstein, that developing a rapport with the community is vital in solving the murders and violent crimes?
Absolutely. I agree with you so strongly. Community policing, it's really a cornerstone of what we do. That's important to recognize. First of all, what I'm so proud of is if you look at the partnership here, and I say partnership, not just amongst the folks that you're interviewing, but all of us, right? It's an old cliche, but it's true. It takes the village. And we are all part of this community, and we are all working together as a team. Everything you do on your side to help us and vice versa, we can't do it without each other. You're representative of that community that we serve. And that word is so important. And that is the pillar of what we do. And on our side here, I'm so proud of what we built together, dare I say, myself and Chief Brimlow, now Director Brimlow. And I'm so proud to be able to continue the legacy of that, because we're only making it stronger. And it's like a tree, and its roots are growing deep into the community. And now with Director Brimlow on the city side too, we're still able to continue building what we've built, but those roots run deep everywhere. So it's invaluable to everything we do. We serve the community, we work with the community, we're partners with the community, we're family with the community. And it's easy to say, but I'm proud to say it's something we practice, especially myself and Chauncey. You know, we're partners in this, and we recognize the importance of, like you touched on, it's a two-way street. The communication is vital, just by virtue of what we're doing here, which is why I love what you do. And I so embrace, and I'm so grateful for our partnership and our friendship, if you will, because you enable that two-way street. Information has to flow both ways. And I'm sure you'll agree with that.
Yes.
Because that's something I've been proud to build with you gentlemen since we've been here, which is, you know, we can't help each other if either side is in the dark as to what the other knows. So that's just one aspect. And I mean, look, I can go on and on for hours about all the multifacets of community policing and what it means in information sharing, and not just information sharing, but how we serve the community, correct? It has to be served in a way that's conducive to, like you said, bridging a divide. And once you bridge the divide, right, eliminate that divide. And how do you do that? I like metaphors, you know, pouring the concrete and building a permanent bridge, a permanent structure, a permanent relationship. And how do we do that? You know, looking at simplest form, I like to call it, maybe some of my personal philosophy, my 3 E's, which for me is empathy, equality, and engagement. And those are 3 things that are interwoven in the methodologies that I espouse here as the district commander, as your chief. And Chauncey and I practice together. And what does that mean in its simplest form, and how does it correlate to community policing? The community, everyone is equal in our eyes. Everybody deserves and gets the same level of service. Now, of course, we prioritize where there are issues and concerns within the community. That's part of the nature of what we do. But everybody has an equal voice, and everybody has equal access. You know, it's another old cliche we hear a lot. And when I hear it, I always correct people quickly. And I feel badly because it's something that a lot of people still think resonates when they say, I know you have better things to do, you know, if they're calling with a problem. I always correct people and say, it's not that we have anything better to do. What you are bringing to my attention is important, and it's of great value to you. Sometimes we just simply have to prioritize, but everything is important. Everything is equal in our eyes. So that's the equality part. The other part is empathy. Empathy is very important, that we are always putting ourselves in the shoes of others, if you will, and putting ourselves in the shoes and homes of those in our community. And it's really simple to practice because we all have something in common. We all live in a community, whether we live here in this city or we live elsewhere. That's something we all have in common. I have a home, Chauncey has a home, Rodney has a home, you have a home. And I simply serve and treat this community and expect my staff to treat and serve this community like I expect to be treated, like I expect my family to be treated. And that makes it pretty simple to do that. It makes it pretty easy to do that. And again, the 3rd E, engagement, engaging with the community. So constantly building those new channels of communication and reinforcing them, if that makes sense. And how do we do that? Several different fronts, but not just by virtue of the units that specialize, right? We have teams, outreach teams that specialize in dealing with the community, dealing with our youth, but it has to start with the boots on the ground, right? It has to start with the deputies that serve our community. And that's one of the important facets if you study and learn about community policing, is it starts right there with those deputies who work those streets, that patrol those streets, that are responding to those homes. They are the foundation. They are the front line of who the community sees and who the community interacts with. So regardless of what we're doing elsewhere, if that doesn't trickle down, if that's not built into the foundation of what our deputies are doing, then community engagement, community policing is not going to function. But I'm happy to say that it happens here in Deerfield Beach, and we're very proud of that. And I think you can attest to that as well. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yes.
Oh, it does,
Yes, it
because
did.
growing up here in Deerfield Beach, Wayne and I, we both grew up right here in the streets, right down the road from the American Legion Hall there. And we, back in those days, cops used to get out of the car and shoot the basketball with the kids and throw the football. And we think that's important, especially over here in District 2, where some people may be a little less likely inclined to talk to the police, but when you develop that rapport with them, then they'll open up to you. I know they will. And it's good to see you all having that you're active in community policing here in Deerfield. And we love what you guys are doing. So again, keep up the good work, Wayne.
Yes, this question here is for Chief Brimlow. What are some of the long-range objectives that you developed in your last job at the Sheriff Department that you brought here to Deerfield Beach as Director of Public Safety?
Well, part of it is actually feeds off of what Chief Hofstein was just talking about. And that goes back to the whole idea of community policing. Community policing, when it started out decades and decades ago, there were some parts of it that were very good, but one of the bad parts of it was that police came into neighborhoods and they were coming with what they thought was the solution for anybody. It was a police-driven initiative. So it was basically the cops coming in and saying, "This is what you need to do. This is how you're going to fix this problem. This is how you're going to solve that." I'm glad that more and more law enforcement agencies are waking up to the fact that was just a lie for a long time. It was deceptive. The community knows what the community needs. The police can come in with resources and with some expertise in certain areas, and they can assist the community. But it was a wrong direction that was taken for many decades, where the cops were the ones who were leading the charge, so to speak, and saying, "This is what you need to do, and this is how we're going to accomplish that," because that completely neglected the individualities of communities, the history of communities, the individual direction that the community wanted to go to. So when you heard Adam just talking, Chief Hofstein just talking, even though he was talking about community policing, oftentimes you heard the word engagement. And that's really what we look for. And this is what I tried to establish when I was the chief over there, was not simply community policing. You can call it one of two things: community engagement or engaged community policing. But it is that the cops are not coming with the answer. We're coming with whatever resources we can bring. We're going to do whatever we can. We're going to bring those points of access to government, to a community, to help the community help itself. And that's a far better approach, because it's not us coming in as either big brother or we're going to tell you how to run things or how to do things. That allows us to get a better solution, in fact, in place. And starting that off, you have to begin by understanding that every single human being has their own dignity and their own personality. And if you don't respect that, you probably shouldn't be in policing these days. And that's a baseline of what you have to start with. So even when I became chief next door, I let all the sergeants, all the command staff know that was one of the key principles. If they didn't like it, they could work somewhere else. That's fine with that. But it takes a long time to establish that. And Adam has been going off of that for a while too, to really engage all of the community policing efforts to get people on board. I see that as a long-term solution, a long-term process, because it is about the relationships that you build with people, with their businesses, with trying to understand the direction that they want to go in. It shouldn't be a police-driven effort. We should be there as your best friends, helping you out to accomplish what the community wants. And I'm pleased that Chief Hofstein is staying in that trajectory. That is my number one long-term plan as far as the law enforcement side. Now on the public safety side, I want to bring that same notion to the other aspects of public safety that now fall under my purview now. So that includes things like code compliance, ocean rescue, park rangers. how do we use these other resources that the taxpayers are paying for to help the taxpayers? Because they're all involved in some way in getting people in compliance, getting people on the same page, making it to where everybody has a nice lifestyle. But we need to be on the same trajectory to make all of the resources the most efficient and trying to accomplish what the community is trying to accomplish. So it really is about bringing everybody to the same point, which is that engagement of the community. And that should be government itself. Government itself should be the highest level of engagement with the community. That's who we serve. That's who's paying our check. That's our whole purpose of existence is for the people that we serve. So that's my long-term perspective for public safety in general. As part of that, I know your family's been in Deerfield Beach for going on almost probably 100 years by now. And that's the case for a lot of families that live here in Deerfield. I don't know if you saw last night at the commission meeting, the property appraiser, Marty Kier, was talking and mentioned how many of the homes that are in Deerfield are long-term residents here. And that's a source of strength for the city. And that's something to leverage for the good of the community. And I think that's something to always keep in mind, no matter what we do as a city. But also, knowing what that was, just to give you an idea, we're pushing right now 90 to 92,000 residents in the city of Deerfield Beach. Whereas in 1970, we were at 19,000. So we went from 20,000, where we're going to be pushing 100,000 people soon. There are a lot of infrastructure issues that come along with that, things that deal with how do you get ambulances to people? How do you get police services to people? And the infrastructure and all of the components that are involved in that to ensure that you're offering the highest quality of life, best safety, and the most professional services is always a challenge. And it's a challenge when things were planned for a population of 20,000 and now we're over 90. So those are some of the things I'm looking at as well in trying to get a wholesome trajectory for the next 2, maybe 3 generations to come.
Okay, and former Chief Brimlow, do you think, this is just me, I'm thinking out loud, in the future that the Public Safety Department should have its own community liaison too? I think.
You mean like for example, like a community liaison, sort of how like law enforcement does and some fire rescue components? The thing is I don't want to waste resources if we have resources in place, because every time we say the word resources, there's a dollar sign attached to that, So I don't want to waste resources or duplicate services. So if we have something that works or is getting to where it's working and we can beef that up or enhance that or make that work better, I'm all for that, because that's going to be a far cheaper solution and a better solution for the residents as well. I think that there does need to be the communication efforts like what we're doing right now, and certainly that information flow needs to keep happening. Which for example, tomorrow there's a District 2 meeting with the commissioner. Public safety is at those in addition to law enforcement. We don't just send law enforcement or fire rescue or whatever, because public safety needs to hear some of these things of the community, because law enforcement can't handle all of it. So sometimes, we've done a lot of things lately where we've been cleaning up some areas that Chief Hofstein can attest to that are involving many departments that have never worked together before, where you have park rangers, code compliance, fire rescue, and law enforcement all working together to tackle certain problems. And the more we can do that, the better we can serve the community. I think if the community absolutely needs a different channel to get their voices heard, then yeah, we should be doing that. But I think maybe right now, looking at what we have and just opening up those communication channels as we can. I think that's our solution for right now. That way we can probably provide the most efficient service. We have great communication between all of public safety. So if somebody is talking to somebody in, say, Chief Hofstein's shop, or they're talking to somebody in code or something like that, we all know about it because we're all on the same page now.
Yeah, and also because I was going to piggyback off of that question too, just what you said about, and I understand what you said about duplicating services. And, you know, when this department first started, you know, I was sitting thinking, I was like saying to myself, you know what, maybe this might be the old Deerfield Beach Police revising itself again through one department. But I was just thinking, do you think one day, again, without duplicating services, do you think the Public Safety Department might have a set of its own investigators one day?
I think it kind of depends on the direction that the city goes. Right now, there's not an infrastructure on the city side to have investigators on the side of public safety right now. As far as criminal investigators, you wouldn't be able to do that so long as you contract services with the sheriff's office. Investigators that do other types of investigations, you know, that may be like administrative type things. But then you have separate investigations that go on for things like code compliance, or even fire. Fire does investigations too. So some of these specialized areas, it wouldn't be practical to have someone in public safety do those investigations because they are highly specialized. And when they get out of the city and they get to a point where they're with an attorney general or a state prosecutor or a county prosecutor, you need to have that specialized knowledge that's backing the investigation, that it's not just, you know, some guy put an investigation together kind of thing. So you really do need that expertise and the credentials that go along with it to present those things in any kind of forum, like a courtroom or an ethics committee or something like that. They really need to be credentialed to perform that job.
Thank you, Daryl.
All right. I want to move on to my second question is about mental illness. And I want to direct this question to Lieutenant Chauncey Cade. And growing up, I base a lot of my questions off of, you know, seeing people that I know and my brother know and my family, and we all know that we see certain people that, you know, walk throughout the community, and we know that they're having, you know, they have some mental issues. And you know, if when you see these people, and if they're in a crisis and someone who doesn't know that person is driving through the city and they see this person and they call 911, and the last thing we want to do is see a police officer come up and, you know, that's really not too familiar with this person, and something tragic happens. So my question is, I want to know if BSO has a trained deputy who deals specifically with or deputy that deals specifically with people who are in a mental health crisis. And how readily available is that trained professional? So if you see someone that you got a call about a person acting strange, or, you know, if you have to call out that person, how long will it take for them to get to that scene?
Normally, our deputies respond. Most of our deputies are crisis intervention trained, right? So they've been through the 40-hour class and they know how to deal with people like that are experiencing some sort of crisis, right? We also have here in Deerfield Beach our behavioral response team. They provide that same level of service, but that's their main function right now, to deal with people who might be suffering from substance abuse or any sort of mental illness, right? So we have the personnel here to respond to that. As far as the response time, depending on the call for service volume, it could be anywhere from 60 seconds to a minute and a half. It all depends on what we have going on. But we do have personnel here in the district that are ready to be deployed to that scene at a moment's notice.
And how often do you get a lot of these calls about regarding a person that's in having a mental health crisis?
We get quite a few. Usually it's with the homeless population. We see a lot of that. So again, we have a behavioral response team. They'll go out there and proactively deal with these people who are going through crisis, offering them services or just providing any resources that we have available for them. Our goal is to provide resources to them to get them out of these, because a lot of them live off of the streets and wooded areas and stuff like that. So we try and get them off the streets and get them help for the crisis that they might be going through at the time. Because a lot of times some people are homeless because of what they're going through mentally. It's not always about money. Mentally, a lot of people are going through things where they can't care for themselves. But again, Chief Hofstein was the one who put this together, the behavior response team, and that's what they deal with. You'll notice a lot less individuals out on the street in Deerfield Beach because of that.
And can you
If
tell?
I may, could I piggyback?
Go ahead, jump right
Thank
in.
you, Chauncey. It was just a good segue. You really synopsized that well. And thank you, Chauncey, for bringing it up. Because, gentlemen, if I may, it is something we're very proud of here in the city. Dare I say, we're ahead of the curve versus a lot of other agencies that aren't as progressive as they could be for this issue. So first and foremost, as Chauncey pointed out, that was a great initiative by the agency. So the Broward Sheriff's Office also has really been leading the way over the years to build that support network throughout all of our districts, which includes Deerfield Beach, whereas it's not just one person that specializes in that. Because as your whole point was, well, if you have one or only two people, how are they going to get everywhere at one time? So we've made all of our folks specialists. All of our folks have the training. Now, of course, there's enhanced training above and beyond that. We'll talk about that. But all of our deputies have that minimal 40-hour crisis intervention training, because that goes back right to that framework we're talking about. Effective community policing, effective public safety starts with the boots on the ground. So, right, it doesn't help if your deputies are lacking in that, and they're not. So we're proud to say that, yeah, it's a 90 to 100% probability that when someone is in crisis, that the first responder that gets there is going to have that training that is necessary. And it's advanced training. The Sheriff's Office provides the most contemporary advanced training possible. And in addition to that training, the deputies have a multitude of resources. So another thing Chauncey touched on is, we come in contact with two types of folks that are in crisis. We have folks who are transient in nature, right? Maybe passing through Deerfield Beach, and then maybe residents. And so we recognize the difference, whereas, the transient folks, hey, we're going to help you. But, where's your home, or are you homeless, or where's the appropriate place to find the help you need? But, when we recognize that it's a Deerfield resident, it does take on a different meaning, because we know they're a hometown family member. And we have so many resources, not just countywide, but right here in Deerfield Beach. We have such a great network with community cares and through the city, a number of folks you've met yourself at many events, that, what's most important is the holistic approach. It's not just showing up and putting a Band-Aid on a problem. It's how do we get to the root cause? How do we provide the resources and sustenance and the support necessary to break that person out of that cycle? And thank you, Chauncey, for mentioning, we're proud that we built this team here. So our district, it's exclusive to Deerfield Beach, has this behavioral response team. So we have deputies and detectives on that team with enhanced training and enhanced access to resources. So for example, we have a very, very strong partnership with Henderson Mental Health, or Henderson Behavioral Health, if you will. And that was something I recognized as very important. I couldn't think of a more invaluable partner, because they provide those forensic services. They provide that medical support that is really instrumental to these folks with these behavioral health issues. In addition to that, BSO has also pioneered a co-responder program. So we actually have a clinician, a behavioral health clinician embedded with the Broward Sheriff's Office. And we piloted that program here in Deerfield Beach, and it was so successful that the Sheriff's Office is bringing that agency and countywide. And now that that's been piloted successfully, we also are working right now, along with our partners at Henderson Behavioral Health, for them to actually, if it all works out, assign a clinician to be embedded specifically here in Deerfield Beach with our deputies. So that's that two-pronged approach when we're out there in the field, whether initially responding, that we have the law enforcement personnel who also bring the training necessary to recognize a person in crisis, but they're there for safety, right? There's always a safety concern. We are here to ensure the safety of the community, but we also will be accompanied by that embedded clinician who brings that behavioral health specialty and knowledge to the situation. So whether that's initially responding or during our follow-up, which, going back to what I was saying, the whole point of the behavioral response team is to bring that holistic model, that we don't just go out there and put Band-Aids on the situation. So traditionally, the revolving door, unfortunately, was we encounter a person in crisis, we Baker Act them. As you know, that's the methodology by which we put somebody into protective medical care. And that's the last we see of them. But what happens when they're released from the Baker Act program? What happens when they're back here in our community, whether they're transient or whether they're a resident? So the behavioral response team was established to address exactly that. And we do that follow-up. And if welcome, we were in their home, we're involved in their therapy as much as they'll allow us to be within the confines of, HIPAA, et cetera. But most importantly is we conduct that follow-up and monitor to either be a partner in getting them the help they need, or if necessary, if it does join, say, something criminal or something that poses a threat or danger to the community, to ensure that they are mandated to get the treatment they need for the safety of the community. So there's just a little snapshot of what we're doing.
I'm glad you mentioned some of those resources that was available. I was going to ask you that, but you pretty much covered a lot, some of those resources that's available for people that's in crisis. So thank you for that, Wayne.
Yes, Chief Hofstein, this question is directed to you. The spot shot of technology that we anticipated so long, how has it worked in Deerfield Beach so far? And if you can you tell us the percentage of alerts and arrests associated with it so far? And
Sure, I'm happy to talk about that. First and foremost, I want to give credit to Director Brimlow and the city that brought the shot spotter technology here. And I know I also give you credit for being a very vocal voice in getting that technology here. And it is here. It's important to mention it's under an evaluation period. So I don't have any technical numbers to share with you yet.
That's fine.
Because we're only several months into it. So we're going to conduct a year-long evaluation. And then what we do is we look on the front end, of course, did the technology work the way it was designed to work? And what was the net result? Did it actually improve public safety? Did it actually result in lives being saved quicker than they would have if the technology was not here? Did it lead to better case resolvability, if you will? So all those things will be evaluated at the appropriate time. But I can tell you the technology is here, it's in place as we wanted it to be structured, and it is working as designed. So I can tell you that we are getting shot spotter alerts, and most importantly, our personnel have all been trained and they are responding accordingly. So I can tell you that we've had a 100% success rate as far as the number of alerts and our response to those alerts. So our staff have been timely, they've conducted the appropriate follow through, they've garnered the appropriate information and evidence from those scenes. So I can tell you that the evaluation period has been successful so far and that it's working. And then ultimately we'll look at all those results and see if the program is truly successful and what kind of impact it's having on public safety here in Deerfield Beach.
I can tell you that it is, that it's working because I know one Friday night, I was at my parents' house and we heard like 4 shots. I would say within a matter of a minute or two, the police was right in that location where that shot came from. They was like a street off, but they were in the area circling the block. So I saw the technology so far, and I think it's good. I think in the long run, it will work out for Deerfield Beach. Also,
and I'm sorry, I don't want to lose track of this thought. It's very important if I can. It may tie in your follow-up question, but it's important to emphasize that like many of the technologies that we have, law enforcement technologies that assist us with fighting crime, it is exactly that. It's a supporting technology, and it's only as good as the human variable, right? That responds to it. But what we don't want it to do is handicap or impede the community's response to the situation, whereas the community might be under the impression that this is a cure-all. So where I'm going with this is I want everybody listening in and to spread the word. Please do not rely solely on ShotSpotter. We don't want it to set a precedent where people think I don't have to call or I shouldn't call because the technology is infallible. It's not, it's technology. And it's all about redundancy, right? It's adding multiple layers to ensure that A, we respond and we respond timely. So we still strongly encourage the community, please, if you hear or see anything suspicious, especially when it comes to suspected gunfire, please don't make an assumption that the technology is going to alert us because it's a scale deployment. So of course we don't have sensors everywhere in the city, A. And B, even where there are sensors, you know, it's technology. It's not infallible. It could be spoofed. It could fail. Humans are the most reliable variable. So the two together are much stronger. So I just want to spread that word. Please do not, you know, think of it as a reason why not to call 911, not to report suspected gunfire.
And that was a great point to make too. You know, that definitely was a great point to make. Nothing better than the old fashioned picking up the phone and calling. Also, Chief Hofstein, I want to ask another question. Is Deerfield Beach prepared for a crime wave that has came upon parts of Lauderdale Lakes,
Pompano
and Pompano
Beach.
Beach? Is Deerfield prepared for, I mean, I know you can't be at every scene, but is Deerfield Beach resources prepared for that? If
Absolutely.
something like that was to happen?
Absolutely. I'm very proud of how prepared we are and we've been. You know, unfortunately, dare I say, since, you know, we call it the COVID rebound, right? Since the lockdown, we have nationally and regionally experienced some uptick, especially in violent crime and gang-related crime. And we were prepared for this, and we put some very important operations and mechanisms in place where, dare I say, that crime wave, let's make the analogy to a wave, has been sweeping over this county. And I'm proud to say it kind of crashed around Deerfield Beach like a wave would crash around a big rock. And I'm not tooting my horn or getting ahead of myself because it's important to give you a disclaimer. We never rest. No, we're never satisfied. And there's always work to be done. But this is going to be a good segue in a minute back over to Assistant Chief Cade, because Lieutenant Cade earned his position for a number of reasons. But one of those is the incredible service he's provided here at the city of Deerfield Beach, and in direct relation to that. You've heard me over the years now, especially at commission meetings and District 2 meetings, et cetera, tout the phenomenal results of many of our crime fighting endeavors. Specifically, Chauncey said an acronym earlier, CST. That's our crime suppression team. So they're in conjunction, of course, with patrol, who's out there on the front lines. They're the tip of the spear for combating violent crime here in the city and gang-related crime. And I've talked over the years of the tremendous results, the hundreds of pounds of narcotics, the dozens of firearms, the dozens of hardened criminals and gang members. And I'm not just talking net fishing, I'm talking surgical strikes to take out the heads of these nefarious criminal organizations that are operating here or through our city. You know, I've talked about numbers, and the mayor's mentioned it. This is no exaggeration. Enough fentanyl taken off of our streets over the last several years to lethal doses that could kill the population of this city 3 times over. All of this was done under Lieutenant Cade and formerly at the time Sergeant Cade's leadership, running a crime suppression team. So that is the reason why I'm so proud to say he's also, again, one of the reasons, besides his personality and his look and his time on the job, and he's just pure competence, but he really earned his way by virtue of that. So, and I'll let Chauncey talk about that a little bit, about some of the endeavors and efforts that we've made.
Well,
Yes, yes.
we're certainly happy to have Lieutenant Cade here. You know, again, we don't know you that well yet,
We
but
hope to get to know you.
we will be getting to know you. You'll be seeing our face all around the city here. I promise you. And keep up the good work too. And my final question that I have, I know we talked a little bit about substance abuse, and any of you can answer this question. It's not directed at anybody. Anybody can jump in on this about substance abuse. You know, we talked about drugs, and drugs affects all of our families. And a lot of time in the past, I used to see people, you know, people that were on drugs, they would get arrested and they would go to jail and then they come right back out. And I personally talked to a few of them. I'm like, did you get any help while you were in jail? And some of them, this was years ago, and some of them said they didn't really get the help that they needed. And I don't think that just putting someone in jail and not getting them help is helping solve the problem. So I did a little research and I looked up, you all have a program called the DTP, a diversionary treatment program. I believe it is. If I'm mistaken, you guys could jump in, but I guess it's a program that was started back in 1991. Am I correct?
That is accurate, Joe. There's a number of programs, fortunately, in layers. I believe the DTP program you're referring to is it's the federal basis for a lot of the local diversionary programs that we have established by the Department of Justice. So look, to answer it as easily as I can, the good news is there's a multitude of programs in a diversionary nature. And again, going back to it from the boots on the ground, you know, from the onset, we recognize that a lot of issues we deal with, again, correlate to behavioral health issues, substance abuse, chemical abuse issues. And whenever there's an opportunity to use that diversionary methodology, we do. Of course, I give the disclaimer, I'm always honest, as you know, our job first and foremost is public safety. So public safety will always trump everything else. Sometimes someone may have to go to jail, or they'll have to go to jail simply for their own protection and most importantly, the protection of the community. But the good news is that diversionary process can be initiated along so many steps along the way. If it can be initiated on the street level, for example, right, we encounter somebody for a misdemeanor quantity of narcotics or an alcohol-related situation, we do have that option. We do have diversionary programs that can be referred to. We have a civil citation program that's diversionary in nature for both adults and juvenile. But even if we are compelled in the immediacy for their own safety, the safety of the public, to make an arrest, there's so many steps along the way where that diversionary path can be engaged, and often is. So whether it's through the jail during their booking process or at the judicial step during their first or second hearing, the judges are all cognizant of that, and they're all aware of all the resources and diversionary options there are. So that's often engaged and often ends up being the path for many folks who, again, find themselves incarcerated due to the substance abuse or chemical abuse issues.
Okay, thank you. I have two more questions and then we'll let you guys go. First question is going to be for former Chief Brimlow. Right now, currently, I know it was a new law. I don't know when it came out, maybe the last year or two or three, where if you call code enforcement on your neighbor, your name now can be made public. I just wanted you to elaborate on that, because I know in the past a lot of people was calling anonymously, and I just want you to just elaborate that they might.
Yeah. So again, it is the way things are, and not only in code compliance, law enforcement, as well as oftentimes the state might have a law that trumps supersedes our laws, and directs us where the city may not have control over that. But as you mentioned, a few years back, the state passed a law that said no more anonymous complaints on code compliance. And my understanding was at the time, people were using code to harass other people in some cases. They don't like their neighbor, so they're calling code and they're just being anonymous all the time. And there were some other reasons too. For example, sometimes a neighbor might observe something or someone might observe something that a code compliance officer doesn't see, you might want to have testimony about that if it ever gets to a magistrate hearing or something along those lines. So whatever their ultimate reasons were, the state said no more anonymous complaints. So yes, you can't make anonymous complaints. All of that is public record, whoever makes the complaint, and that is the case. I will say this, that to make a complaint for the city of Deerfield, we make it very easy. If you need to make a complaint, you can just simply go to the city's website, go to the code compliance section, and there is a link that takes you to an outside website where you fill out the form of whatever the complaint you have. You can also go to that same place and find out what the status is of the code complaint. So,
right.
You know, there are a lot of misconceptions about code. Just as an example, let's say that your neighbor kind of has, you know, tall grass or something like that, and it's out of control, or maybe they have a boat or an RV or something parked in the lot that doesn't belong there, and you make a complaint. What happens is the complaint gets initiated. The owner of the property is notified of the complaint, and by state law, they're given a certain amount of time, depending on the nature of the complaint, but they're given a certain amount of time to fix it. And if they're working toward fixing it and they're working with their code compliance officer, they'll work together to come up with a plan to ultimately fix the problem. But even if they don't try to fix it, what ends up happening is we're allowed to fine them. So it's very frustrating to folks when they make a complaint and it looks like nothing's being done. You make a complaint, the boat's in the yard, let's say, you come back Thursday, it's still in the yard. Over the weekend, you're still looking at it. Next week, you're still looking at it. And that's because of what the parameters are that code is actually allowed to do. Code can't just come take the boat. They can't do a lot of those kinds of things that we might want them to be able to do to make it nice. What they can take action on are life safety issues. That's what they can take action on, life safety issues with permission of the magistrate, which means they have to demonstrate to the magistrate that the person didn't fix the problem in a certain amount of time, and there's a life safety issue. We need to fix this problem. And so it seems like it takes forever, and it's frustrating for every single one of us have lived with these kinds of code violations. It's just how the government, how the laws actually have us work. We can only do so much.
Right.
And so there's only so much that code compliance can do. And certainly the issue of the anonymous complaint, that's gone now for a couple of years. So that does become public record. But I just say the other part because it is, I know code compliance oftentimes is frustrating because it just seems like things don't get done very quickly. It's you know, the response time seems to be very slow. But that response time, a lot of that is dictated by Florida law. Florida law has a 30-day period, even in Florida state statute that governs most of our code cases. So
right.
There's a lot of waiting. And then even after 30 days, if somebody decides they don't want to remove the boat, then they simply get a fine. And they're going to get fined to have the violation. So
right.
It's really why we try to focus on compliance.
Right.
Fine doesn't do anybody any good. Nobody benefits from the fine. You know, we're still looking at the mess that was the complaint originally. So the idea is to get things cleaned up and get things the way we want them, not to generate fines.
And while we're on code compliance, what about the 18-wheelers? We get a lot of complaints about 18-wheelers being parked in the neighborhoods and in front of the houses and everything. What can be done about these 18-wheelers that's been being parked in the residential neighborhoods?
So the easiest way to deal with that is to call BSO and have a deputy respond out there. And for two reasons. One is they can cite them. And number two is they can look at it, because the biggest fear is when you have an 18-wheeler or some other big truck or something that's blocking emergency access. So if it's blocking emergency access, that's a real problem, because that means an ambulance can't get through, a fire truck can't get through, a police car can't get through, and that's a bad situation.
Right.
And the deputy can make that assessment. And if it is blocking that, they can fix that problem right then. Right. Otherwise, it is that they will cite the vehicle. And that's just a huge problem. And not just here, that's a huge problem everywhere, because the 18-wheelers would rather pay a parking ticket or some other fine and not have to deal with it. Now, the city did pass, the commission passed a law of, I can't remember when, but it's been now definitely more than a year, that enhances the fine for those trucks. So some of it is educational, that the trucks are starting to learn that, because the information we were getting was that it's a lot cheaper to pay the parking ticket than it is to drive down to Pompano and park at the truck stop and then leave the truck stop in the morning, right? That was expensive for them. They just rather pay the parking ticket. So the city commission did increase the fine for 18-wheelers parking illegally in the city. Some of it is educational. We got to be diligent, and we just got to keep putting the tickets on these trucks.
And while
And if they are creating a hazard like that, a safety hazard, BSO will take care of that right away.
while we're still on code compliance, finding illegal junkyards. We've been getting a lot of complaints about the illegal junkyards here in Deerfield, where you have people basically the old Sanford and Son. We all know what Sanford and Son junkyard looks like, and they have boats, RVs, tons of bicycles, refrigerators, everything in their backyards, and they attract rodents and wildlife and everything, and it's an eyesore. It brings down the property value. What is being done, or what can be done about these illegal junkyards?
So the first thing I would say is, once it starts, call it in. Go online, submit the complaint. But if we get to it earlier, that's usually when it can be resolved. If it's somebody that just isn't going to care, and they don't care that you're going to put, thousands of dollars worth of fines on their house, then they don't care. But there are people that are that way. There are people that just aren't going to care, and they'll just take the fines and they'll just do whatever. But it's to call in early, and I'll tell you why. Because eventually, when we get to it, and when someone does make a complaint and it looks like it's a health safety issue, it costs the taxpayers a lot of money. We had it had to be going on for years. No one had called it in. It was some tires that you couldn't see them readily, but there were some tires being dumped in one of the lots off of Dixie Highway. It was going on for quite some time, and finally, the code compliance discovered this. So they initiated a case on it. But by the time we got to fixing the problem, it was a few $1,000s. Well, that's not a few $1,000s that's from nobody. That's a few $1,000s that taxpayers have spent, and probably money that'll not be recovered. So that few $1,000s could be spent for something a lot more worthwhile than cleaning up somebody's yard. So the idea is to get in early when people start to do that. But if there is something that's out there right now, we should be getting a case on that. Don't let those sit. Especially if they're health safety, like what you're saying, where rodents are starting to appear, that we need to address right away. That becomes a safety issue. You have kids playing around in the area, or now you've got the rodents coming into your yard and all that kind of stuff. That's just not acceptable.
Thank you. Wayne?
Yes, and final question, and we'll let you gentlemen go and everyone go. This is for Lieutenant Cade. Did you see a rise in arrests related to the new gun law that was passed by the Florida legislature on July, that went into effect on July 1st?
Well, we don't have the data for that, so I honestly couldn't tell you. We're just in August. This is the second day of August. So I definitely would not have that info, but just again, if you ask maybe a few months down the line, I could probably have that information for you.
Right.
Yeah.
If I could make a quick comment on that.
Sure, go ahead.
I just would encourage people to really read the law on that, because my biggest fear is that people aren't educated on the law, and they're gonna get jammed up, and they didn't even mean to. They're doing something that they didn't know was wrong. For example, if you're carrying a concealed gun, even if you legally can carry a concealed gun, and you go into a bar, if you don't know the law, you're not going to know that that's illegal.
It is.
It's still illegal. It doesn't matter. It's still illegal. You still can't walk in the police station carrying a gun. All these kind of things. But if people don't read the law and they don't investigate where those places are that they can't go, I'm afraid that people are going to good people are going to get jammed up just because they don't know that part of the law. So I would encourage people, if that's where their head is and they're gonna carry something concealed and they're legally allowed to do so, they really should make sure they understand the law about that.
Absolutely.
And that's my
absolutely.
concern too,
Right.
that a lot of good people with good intentions will get jammed up with the new law. I got my concealed weapon. I had them now about 34 years now. Never had a problem, but I just hope everyone would get some type of training at least to go with that before they use a gun. And I would hope they at least would think twice so they don't find themselves in jail or prison for the rest of their life. But
Right. Absolutely.
that concludes everything. If anything else.
Final thoughts, and if you, Chief Hofstein, final thoughts?
Oh, sorry, I unmute. So
Do you
listen,
have any final
thank you so
thoughts?
much for having us here. We welcome any opportunity. My final thought is we're very proud of our transparency and connection with the community. I have an open door, open email policy, as you gentlemen well know. So I encourage the community. We'll be at the District 2 meeting on Thursday, as always, to answer questions and talk to the community. But I'm always available anytime. Whether folks want to reach out to me by email, come to the office, or reach out through you. As you know, you've got a 24/7 lifeline to me, especially as you come to keeping the community updated as to anything going on, anything of a critical nature. I'm happy to do
Thank
that.
you.
Lieutenant Cade, final thoughts? Do you have any final thoughts?
Just want to reach out to your viewers and let them know, like, a lot of these issues in their neighborhood, I want them to feel free to reach out to BSO and let us know. We're not out there. So a lot of these things we won't know unless they tell us. It's a partnership between us and the community, and it's a two-way street. So if they're having issues in their neighborhood, we want them to feel free to call us and let us know, and we'll address the problem, but they have to let us know.
And finally, Office of Public Safety Director, former Chief Rodney Brimlow, final thought?
Yeah, I have the same sentiment. No matter which way that you choose to communicate, whether it's through you guys or through your commissioner or whomever, it doesn't really matter. Email us, call us. It really is the communication that is the key part to making it successful. It's bringing in the engagement part of that engaged community policing. That's the most important part. And to have an engaged community for all government levels is very important. So just keep getting the message out that we do want to hear what people have to say, and we value what people have to say in the community.
And I want to thank you guys for coming on. I know we said the time we said, and y'all went over that.
Yeah.
Thank you. We
want
really
to thank you all
appreciate
for taking the time out. We know you guys are busy and everything, and got crime going on out there. And we want to thank you all for, stopping by our podcast and talking to us. And hopefully some of our viewers learned something here today. And, don't be afraid to reach out to Captain Chief Brimlow, former Chief Brimlow. Don't be afraid to reach out to our current Chief Adam Hofstein and Lieutenant Chauncey Cade. Reach out to these guys if you got any concerns or help solve a crime or whatever. You can remain anonymous. And we want to thank all of you guys for stopping by the Adams Brothers podcast. You'll be seeing us out in the community. Thank you all. Be safe. More importantly, please be safe, and we'll be talking to you all soon.
And don't forget
You guys
about
take care.
Don't forget about
Thank you.
everyone tomorrow night. Commissioner Ben Preston is having a District 2 meeting tomorrow at the Hillsborough Technology Center at 7:00 p.m. tomorrow. We'd like to see everyone out and stay engaged in the community. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, gentlemen.
Good night.